Hi, everybody. Come on in. It's time for Bible study. I've been messing around trying to get I think it's working, the Facebook feed. I think it's working. Fingers crossed. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We took a break from getting together over the summer. So this is our first time back again. So I'm happy to virtually see you. Um, so I'm excited because I want to ask you, do you tend to spend a lot of your time and energy thinking about other people's problems? Do you find that you're unable to feel happy unless other people are happy? Does your peace go out the window when someone's upset with you? If you said yes to any of those, this is for you today because we're going to talk about breaking free from people pleasing. If I haven't met you, I'm Mary Dittman. I'm an award-winning business professor on the collegiate level. I'm the founder of One-Derful Life and the author of How to Be Happy When You're Single and You Don't Want to Be Single. And One-Derful Life is a state of mind that came about because I was unhappy for many years because I was single and I didn't want to be single. And for me, part of a fulfilled a fulfilled life includes being a wife and a mother. But I'm well over 40. I've never been married. I don't have any children. And I got to the point where I said, I really just want to be happy. And One-Derful Life is about getting to the place in life where you feel peaceful and content and joyful, even if you don't have what you want in life. And the amazing thing is that then when you are, when you're happy and you're in a good space, you're actually more attractive. You're more likely to meet your Mr. Right. But then even if he doesn't come along, you're still happy and that's what you wanted anyway. So that's what One-Derful Life is about. It's not about getting to a place where you say, like, I don't need a man. I don't want a man because I want a man. But sometimes the older you get, it can feel more challenging to meet someone. And we want to enjoy our life. Jesus in John 10:10, he said, I came that you would have your life, have a life, and have it in the full to abundance until it overflows. Jesus didn't come and die so that we could all just trudge through life. All right, so let's talk about people pleasing. Before we do that, let's say a prayer. Lord, I want to thank you for this time together right now to study your word. I thank you for all of my sisters who are here and the ones who will watch on the replay. Lord, I ask that you'll make my tongue like the pen of a ready writer. Make me smaller, Lord, so that you'll be bigger. And I ask that you'll bless everybody who hears about you today. And we thank you and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, let's talk about people pleasing and how to move past it. So, first of all, I'm going to tell you some things I've been through, and let's also get some definitions going. A lot of us are people pleasers. We would say, I'm a people pleaser. Now, I said that one time to one of my mentors. I, so and so was upset. I was feeling like weird or guilty about telling somebody something. And I said, well, I'm just a people pleaser. And this woman said to me, she's like, no, you're not. You're selfish. And I was like, oh, what? And she said, yeah, you're selfish. You don't care about whether or not they're upset. You are trying to avoid feeling the yucky feelings that you feel when you know they're upset with you. She said, you don't care if they're upset. You just care that you feel bad when you know they're upset with you. And I mean, I really had to take that and think about it. And she was right. Now, I'm not saying that any of you, have my situation, but it is a question worth asking. And in truth, people pleasing is really codependence. Now, when the word codependent was first being used, it was to describe the type of relationship that somebody has with an addict or an alcoholic. So the alcoholic or the addict is dependent upon the alcohol or the drugs. And someone who is codependent, because they're so enmeshed with that addict, just like the alcohol or the addict needs the drugs to be okay, it's almost like the loved one also is depending on those drugs. That was the original term codependent. Now it's morphed to mean some other things. And today, when we would use the word codependent, what it usually means is I need everything out there to be okay, and then I'll be okay. And we specifically see it with respect to our relationships. And codependence is a situation where really we're depending on people rather than depending on God. So, and I'll put these in the chat. You know, if you're on Zoom, one of the great things if you sign up for the Zoom is number one, you've got the chat, but number two, we send you a replay because now Facebook takes replays down after 30 days. So I'll always email you the replay, but I'll put the scriptures in the chat here and on Zoom. I think I wrote down the wrong. Oh, wait, no, here it is. So Jesus was saying, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Now, you know, Jesus isn't telling us that we need to fear God, like, oh, he's going to get me. But what Jesus is saying is, you know, keep your priorities straight. I'll put that in the chat. Matthew 10:28. When we are, I'm going to say when we're people pleasing, okay? Many times what we're doing is we are manipulating. I'm going to do what I think this other person wants me to do, or I'm going to do what they're asking me to do because I want them to like me. I want them to think a certain way about me. I want them to be happy with me. And that's a form of manipulation. When you're just like you're just trying to be a certain way so that the other person will say or do or think something. That's manipulation. You're not being honest. You're being fake. So let's take a look at the danger of the codependence. I can't be okay unless you're okay. The danger with that is that we're really focused on other people's happiness. Now, happiness is external. Happiness, it's based on what is happening, happiness happening. And so, you know, you wake up and it's sunny outside, now you're happy. And then you stub your toe, now you're not happy. And then you get an unexpected, check in the mail, now you're happy. And then your child calls you and they're upset about something, now you're not happy. So it's up and down. Happiness is based on your external circumstances. Joy is internal. Okay, joy is a fruit of the Spirit. When we are saved, we get the fruit of the Spirit planted in our heart. And one of those fruits is joy. But joy is internal. Joy would be based on your relationship with God. So you're able to access that joy. And joy is I would suggest it's a state of peace or a state of hopefulness. And we have that because we have a relationship with God and we trust him. So we get to choose. I'm going to go to Galatians 1:10. Put that in the chat. Galatians 1:10. And in Galatians 1:10, Paul says, am I now trying to win the approval of men or of God? Or am I trying to please men? If I were still trying to please men, I would not be a servant of Christ. And what Paul is telling us is you got to choose. Jesus said, and I can't remember where this is, you can look it up, but Jesus said at one point, he said, look, the world hates me and it's going to hate you too. Jesus nowhere has said, if you follow me, everything's going to be great. What he said was, if you follow me, you got to carry your own cross. It's not going to be easy. Now, we get to choose who is going to be the God sitting on the throne of our hearts. And, the first commandment is that thou shalt have no other gods before me. And what that means is anything that we feel or we believe, I have to have that in order to be happy or to have a good life or to feel okay. I have to have that or I can't do it. That's an idol. Now, I had to confront that in my own life because there were many years where I said, I can't be happy if I'm going to be single. I mean, I'll just trudge through life until God calls me home. Well, first of all, that's a terrible way to live. What kind of witness is that? Nobody wants to be a Christian if you're just going like Eeyore, I'll just go and do my best. But when I was saying it's Jesus is not enough for me. God is not enough for me. I need this. When we do that, that's an idol. Again, I'm not saying any of you are as wretched as I am, but that's the place I was in. Now, I'm not suggesting that nothing would bother you. Okay, obviously things happen. People die, people leave us. You lose your job, you get a diagnosis. And of course you're upset by that. I'm not saying that you would just say like, oh, everything's fine just because I have God. No, I mean, the Lord does not expect that from us. Okay, he says, give thanks in all things. He doesn't expect us to thank him. Oh, Lord, thank you that my kids are strung out on drugs. No, God would never ask you to do that. What he does say is, thank me that I am still God. Thank me that I am still God in the midst of what you're going through. That's what he wants. Now, we get to choose our God. Okay, and if you say, I believe in God, I'm a Christian, I believe Jesus died for me, I'm saved, but I'm never going to be happy until my kids get their lives together. I'm never going to be happy until, my mom changes or, I get married or whatever. You're not going to lose your salvation. You're just not going to have any victory because God is not going to, the Holy Spirit is a gentleman. He's not going to force you to just, to serve him rather than another God. He's not going to do that. You get to make that choice. The difficulty is that people's emotions and things out there, many times they're not under our control. I had to quit putting a goal on my relationship status as, like I'm going to get married this year because I'm like, well, there's at least one other person that would need to make a decision. I mean, I can say I'm going to, save X amount of money this year. I can control that. But if it's, I'm going to, meet my Boaz this year. Well, maybe not. Now I can't say I'm going to go out every weekend and put myself in a place where I could meet him. But whenever we're tying our peace, our ability to be okay, when that is tied to anything out there, I'll be happy when I lose weight. I'll be happy when I have more money. I'll be happy when I get a promotion. I'll be happy when I can buy a house. Those things are always changing. And so you're always up and down, and then you wonder why you're always up and down. It's because you've got yourself hooked on to something that's going like this. And when we look at other people and we feel like I just need them to be okay. And listen, I don't have children. I know many of you do. And I've heard it said one time that a mother is only as happy as her most miserable child. And I think that's true. I know it's really hard for moms and dads, but I'm talking to women. I know it's very hard for moms when they have an offspring. I know this is something my dad and I go back and forth with. He'll say child, and I'm like, I'm not a child, Dad. I'm a grown woman, like with a 401k, and I'm an AARP card carrying member now. And he's like, you're still my child. Okay. But even when it's your son or daughter is grown, you hurt when they're hurting. I'm not suggesting that you would cut off your emotions, but what I am suggesting is that if your ability to be okay is dependent on what they're doing, you're in trouble. I would say, especially if you've got grown kids, because ultimately they should be doing whatever they want to do, and you may not get a vote. Now, I just said, people's emotions are unstable, but God is stable. So in Hebrews 13:8, God says, or excuse me, uh, we think it's Paul who wrote Hebrews, but says Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And then in Malachi 3:6, I'll put these in the chat in just a moment. So in Malachi 3:6, where's Malachi? There we are. All right, Malachi 3:6, God says, I, the Lord, do not change. So God doesn't change. He says, I'm the same yesterday, today, and forever. I believe it's in Genesis around the time of like Noah's Ark, God says, two, you know, heaven and earth may pass away, but two things will never pass away, my name and my word. Let me put those scriptures in here. Hebrews 13:8 and Malachi 3:6. So God is stable. I think most of us would say, like, I would really just like it if I wasn't just up and down all the time. Like if I could just have some stability. Well, the only way you can have stability is if your ability to be okay is tied to something that is stable. And the only thing that's stable that you can do that with is God. That's it. All right, so let's talk about how do you stop the people pleasing? I mean, I'm the kind of girl, like, I like to know what to do, but I really like to know how to do it. So I'm going to give you some ways you can stop doing this behavior. Now, before I do that, you would need to understand how things happen in life. So what happens is you have a thought, that thought creates a feeling, that feeling drives a behavior, and the behavior gives you a result. Thought, feeling, behavior, result. For example, if I think, okay, listen, I'm sure we've all done this. If I think, I texted my friend and she never texted me back, and now I start to think she's mad at me, that produces a feeling. The feeling is anxiety. Oh no, she's mad at me. That's going to make me do something, probably start blowing up her phone. That's going to create a result. It might be I get more and more upset as she doesn't respond. It might be the more I'm blowing up her phone, she is getting mad. At the very least, she's like, why are you being so needy? So a lot of this really is going to start in your own thoughts. Okay. All right. So now, how to stop people pleasing. Number one, you have got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable because you're about to start doing something that is new to you and you haven't done it before, and therefore it's going to feel weird. And then the other people that you're doing this with are most likely going to also be upset. I'll talk about that in a second. So, whenever we try to do something new, a couple of things happen in your brain. Like, for example, if you said, I'm going to start eating a healthy breakfast, and you said, okay, so every morning I'm going to get up and I'm going to have like a green smoothie. At first, your brain produces dopamine, which is that motivation, feel good chemical, because it's like, oh, we're doing something new, cool. But then your brain starts to say, I'd rather just do what we've always done. Okay, so your brain likes to do what is familiar. And so after a few days, your brain is going to say, like, well, we don't really have time to make a smoothie, so let's just go ahead and have our Pop-Tart like we normally do. And then your brain really does prefer the way we always did things, so let's just go back to the Pop-Tarts. And then you wonder why things don't change in your life. But a lot of it is because many of us are not okay being uncomfortable. This is a big part of what drives our codependency. As I said at the example that I gave at the very beginning, which was when my friend said, you don't care how they feel, you're avoiding that you feel yucky when they're mad at you. And that's a big part of what we try to avoid. Parents do this right now all the time. This is a big problem we're seeing in Gen Z because parents looked at their kids and didn't want their children to feel bad. I don't want, and listen, a lot of that is driven by love. I saw one of my girlfriends, she was like, oh my gosh, my son is out in the backyard. He's just sitting there. He looks bored. I don't want him to feel bored. I'm going to go help him. I'm going to go. And her husband said, hey, it's okay for him to be bored. He's sitting out there. We don't know. I mean, he's in his head. We don't know what he's thinking about, but if he's bored, it's okay. It is good for him to be bored. He will find a way to entertain himself. I mean, just as a little side note, when my brother and I, my mom and dad on a Saturday, they'd be like, you two kids go outside and play. And we'd go outside and we'd sit there for a few minutes and we'd be like, this sucks, man. I'm bored. We would always find some game, something that we would get so like really richly involved in, riding our bikes and this and that with the neighbor kids and, you know, you know, good and bad guys and, whatever, spies, whatever we played. And we'd get so into it until my mom at dinner time would be screaming, y'all get back in the house. She couldn't get us out the door. And then because when we were bored, it made us creative. And so a lot of times parents right now, it's that they can't handle how they feel when their child is upset. Now, when we want to stop people pleasing, what that means is that we have to start to be okay with being uncomfortable. You better figure out if you can be okay with that. Because people are going to be upset. When you change what you're doing, anytime you change, it's very disruptive. It means other people have to change. And most of us don't like change. And by the way, women experience any type of change as loss, and it's very frightening. So if you start changing the way you do things, it really throws people off. Most of us have a dynamic with our relationships that's, pretty much the way things go. And if you switch that up, it's almost like you've broken an agreement. So you can plan on the other people responding. Now, when you say no about something, or you say, I don't really want to participate in that, a way to tell what you're dealing with is if somebody doesn't respect what you're saying, that is not love on their part. That is control. I've had a couple of family members that when I've said, I don't want to go do that, or I really feel like I need a minute to go do this. If they argue with me, I can tell that it's a control. They want me to do what they want me to do. Now, it's funny because like my brother and my sister-in-law, when I say I don't want to do this or I do want to go do this, they are like, okay, yeah, great, that's cool. And that's how I know that they're coming from a loving place. They're not trying to manipulate me and control me into doing what they want me to do. So paying attention to what is the reaction that I'm getting. And it doesn't mean you need to have a big conversation about, right now you're trying to control me because the other person will be like, no, I'm not, I just love you. But it'll help you navigate your way, is what I'm trying to tell you. So you've got to be uncomfortable with, or you've got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable because other people are going to have a reaction when you start switching it up. Okay. Now, again, your primary goal here is to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So you always want to pray. You always want to pray. Ask the Lord to give you strength. Ask the Lord what would be the most godly response in this situation, or what is the most godly way for me to handle this? Please help the other person, with what I'm about to say or what I'm about to not do. And he will help you. So now let's say that the people pleasing is taking a form of, for example, um, let's say you have a friend and um, she really wants you to go, let's say, out to an event with her. And she wants to go because, she's trying to find Mr. Right. Maybe you're not really into it, but but she doesn't want to go alone. And you're her wing woman. You always go with her to stuff, even though you frequently don't want to. You're like, well, I want to be a good friend. I don't want to be a jerk. And now, you're realizing like I don't enjoy going to those events, and I feel like I'm just being used anyway as a safety blanket. So I don't want to go. Now, when you tell her this, listen, I know I've gone with you the last 6 months to these events, but I don't want to go. I'm not enjoying it. She's going to get upset. Well, I can't go by myself. How can I go without you? I mean, we always have a good time. Please, oh, don't let me go by myself. Now, what do you do? Because you've said, I don't want to go. Um, there's a line in the movie Mary Poppins where she says, I never explain myself. And I love that because when you start to explain yourself, people think it's negotiation. So if you say, well, I don't like going because I feel like I have to walk around all the time and I have to get dressed up and I'm really tired and it's like a lot of chit chat, small talk, and I just don't really enjoy it. Now your friend thinks, okay, if I can solve those problems, you'll change your mind. This is not what you want. So don't explain it. Why don't you? And I've had people say to me, I need you to explain to me why you feel this way, or I need you to explain to me why you're not going to do this. Well, you know what? I'm not explaining myself. Because, like I said, when you explain, it becomes a negotiation. No is a complete answer. And what I will do is I will just keep repeating what I said. I hear you. I know you're upset. I really don't want to go. I don't enjoy these events. So I'm not going to go. Okay. And when you will, a lot of times what gets us with people pleasing is we have a mindset that they're upset. Okay, so I said or did something that they didn't like, and now they're upset, and it's my fault. And so I need to make them okay with my decision. Mm-mm, no, it is the other person's responsibility to come to terms with what you decide. So it is not your job to keep everyone else happy. And I just want you to think about some of the places in your life where you have this. Most of the time, the folks that you have these unhealthy codependent relationships with, you're always worried about them and trying to keep them happy. And I can promise you, they're not doing the same for you. So you're thinking about them, they're thinking about them, who's thinking about you? And then later, when the tables are turned and you need them to do something for you and they don't, now you're upset. And you say, I can't believe, I have always been there for you. I have gone with you to these speed dating things for the last 6 months, even though I didn't want to go. I went because you needed me. And now I'm asking you to just go to the store and drop me off some chicken noodle soup because I'm sick and you won't even do it. Well, 1 Corinthians 13 says love doesn't keep score. And so many times, it goes back to that manipulation thing. Like, I'm just doing all these things for you because I don't want you to be upset. But then you actually have an underlying agenda because later on you're going to cash that in. Well, I've gone to all these things and I did all this stuff to support you because we're friends when I didn't want to go. And now I need you and you can't do this one thing for me. Well, that's not fair. Unless up front you say, listen, I don't like going to these speed dating things, but I'm going to go with you. And my expectation is that when I need something from you, you're going to say yes no matter what. Which, if I were your friend, I don't know that I would take that deal because I'm like, yes, no matter what. I don't know what that means. So, what I have learned is that in the same way that I have learned to get over things, other people can indeed learn to get over things. And I'm in a coaching group with some women who are mothers, and this is a thing I see frequently. You know, mom will come in for coaching, and I'm just really struggling because, and sometimes it's legit. Like my daughter's going through divorce, and she's really having a hard time, and she's staying with us because her husband kicked her out. Whatever. And there's a lot of like mom is in turmoil. Like I cannot possibly be happy because my child is upset. The problem is now you've got two upset people in the household and nobody's solving any problems. Now you might say, but how could I possibly be happy when someone close to me is struggling? That is not cool. Now, I'm not suggesting, you don't want to rub your happiness in the face of an unhappy person. I had a friend do that to me one time. I was going through a breakup and he's like, I just love my relationship. It's so great. Everything's good. And there I am like, not the best timing. Read the room. But what I am saying is that you being a peaceful person and you being okay, regardless of what they're going through, can actually be sort of like a beacon of light because you're showing them what they can get to. So when we're all enmeshed with other people and like, I got to keep you okay, and you're upset, now I can't handle it, that it's bad for everybody. That's what is enabling. So again, when the word codependent first started being used, it was used in respect to like addicts and alcoholics. And then when you talk about enablers, you're enabling when you reward bad behavior. So I'm a professor at the university. I have gotten very comfortable with people being mad at me. And one of I the way that I enforce, so one of the things I'm trying to teach my students is you show up where you're supposed to be on time. I think without exception, unless I've had a serious technical issue, I always start this Bible study at 2 p.m. So, and listen, I start my classes on the nose. And when they come in late, there's a penalty for that. Because if I don't have a penalty, then I'm rewarding the bad behavior. And well, but I told them to be there on time. Yeah, but you know what? Um, People are going to do what they're rewarded for. So you don't when we stay in these unhealthy patterns in relationships, we're enabling the other person. We're teaching them that this is a good way to live, and it's not. Now, look, I used to think compromise in relationship meant just do whatever the other person wants, and hopefully someday they'll do what I want. Okay, again, that's codependence. A compromise is not, I'll just do what you want me to. Compromise might be when you're like, if you have lunch with a friend once a month and she says, I really want to go have Mexican food. If you say, like, it's not my favorite, but oh, well, I really want to go. Okay, I'll tell you what, we'll go to Mexican food this month, and then next month we're going to go have sushi, which is my favorite and not yours. Now, if she says, well, I don't want to do that, say, well, then let's pick something we both can handle. Okay, compromise is not, I'll just do everything you want. Okay, now, and there are situations where, of course, you do want to do what the other person wants. For example, I have a new boss, love him, he is great. We had a conversation last week. He said, look, in the spring, I'm going to need you to pick up another section of this class you teach. I said, okay, I like to teach. I really like to teach class A in the spring. And he's like, yeah, but I need you to also teach class B. I said, okay. And he said, and by the way, we may have to choose A or B. And I said, well, I choose A. And he said, I understand that, but we're going to do B. He said, I want you to be able to do both, but if we have to pick, I'm telling you, we have to do class B. Now, I mean, I guess I could say no and be a jerk about it. Probably then I need to polish up my resume and look for a new job. Obviously, somebody who is in godly authority over you, and my boss is in authority over me. He's not asking me to do anything wrong, immoral, illegal. He's a Christian. So when he tells me he needs me to do something, you know, and I tell him I don't want to do that, and he says, I know, but I mean, I have a choice I can make. But yeah, I mean, usually I'm like, well, okay. That's part of being an adult at work. We don't always get exactly what we want. I'm talking more now. I'm in the past, I have had relationships with bosses where I've been very like, I haven't talked to him in a while. Is he mad at me? What if he, yeah, what if he's mad at me? And then I'll manufacture some reason to go talk to my boss to just like take the temperature. That's what I'm talking about. That's the codependent enmeshed behavior. Instead of just saying, well, you know what? My boss is probably busy. And if I need to talk to him, I'm sure he'll stop by. This has been a few years since I got tangled up in this, but I remember one time I got tangled up and I was like, Lord, I'm really feeling anxious about my relationship with my boss. And, I'm just like, I just want to make sure everything's okay. Please help me. It's amazing to me when I've asked the Lord for help with things because, like, within 4 hours, my boss had called me and said, can you come into my office for a second? And I walked in and he was like, hey, I just want to ask you about such and such, but I just want to touch base. Haven't seen you in a minute. I'll tell you one time, I was going to be staying in town for Thanksgiving, and one of my very best girlfriends, I was like, oh, I wish she would invite me over. And I was like, how can I possibly, oh no, it was Christmas. And I was like, how can I get myself an invitation to her house for Christmas? And I was manipulating. How can I get her to ask me for Christmas? And then I stopped and I was like, Lord, I know she's a strong Christian. I know she's really tight with you. I sure would love it if I could get invited to her house for Christmas, which has never happened before. Um, Lord, could you maybe work it out? And I remember I was away for the weekend. I was in a hotel in the shower. I got out of the shower within like literally within 1 hour, I had a text from my friend. Hey, by the way, are you going out of town for Christmas? I was like, no, I'll be in town. And she said, why don't you come over and have Christmas with us? I literally fell on the floor of the hotel. And I was like, wow, Lord, thank you. So, it goes back to what I said earlier about if we put God on the throne in our hearts and in our lives, he's the only one who can truly influence other people. We can manipulate, but at some point, people feel that manipulation and it feels yucky to them, and they may not even know why, but they just feel yucky about you. And so when God is at the center and you're going to him, he can influence other people. We're told in the Bible that God kept in the book of Esther, God kept the king up all night. He couldn't sleep. And he called for the journals of his reign to be read to him so he could feel better. And that's how he um, came to see that he needed to honor Mordecai. We're told in the Bible that God directs the heart of the king, of the ruler. I would much rather have God influence someone than me manipulate, because he's really better at influencing than I am at manipulating. So, if I had to tell you the most important thing about ending people pleasing, it's about, I would say, get very honest with yourself about what's really motivating your behavior. And then second, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Now, the good news is once you become used to not people pleasing, it won't feel uncomfortable. That will be your new normal. Just like if you stuck with the green smoothie, that would be your new familiar. And that's what your brain would be like, okay, we're having a smoothie and not a Pop-Tart. But you have to stick with it. And, listen, I have people in my life who really act out when I say I'm not going to do what they want me to do. I'll pray for them and just say, I know you're upset. I'm sorry you're upset. But, I'm not obligated to do what other people want me to do, except for, like I said, my boss. I'm not even obligated to do that. I just choose it because I like my job. So I hope that that gives you some things that you can address in your people pleasing and some questions that you could ask yourself. I did mention earlier that I have a book. I'm working on my second one right now. I'm hoping to release it next year. But my current book is How to Be Happy When You're Single and You Don't Want to Be Single. It's available on Amazon. It's an ebook, but if you're like me and you like a paperback, you might want to check that out. Our next study is going to be the first Saturday in October. That's Saturday, October 4th at 2 p.m. Eastern. If you've signed up for the Zoom link, I always email that to you. So if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, you can get the Zoom link, and that way you can watch on Zoom, and then we email you a replay that you can watch at your leisure. So I hope I'll see you again next month. But let's say a prayer before we depart. Lord, we thank you that you want to help us with relationships, Lord. Father, please help us keep you on the throne of our hearts. Lord, please help us to have no other gods before you. Father, I ask that you'll give us wisdom and discernment so that we can see when we're engaging in codependent relationships, that's not what you want for us. And Lord, I ask that you'll be with all my friends who are with me here today and who are going to watch on the replay. I ask that you'll bless these ladies, give them the desires of their hearts. And Lord, please show up big for them and help them to start to untangle any unhealthy relationships that they might have. And Lord, we thank you and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, ladies, I want to thank you for joining me today. I'll see you next month. You can always find me at marydittman.com. You're welcome, ladies, on the chat. And like I said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. In fact, a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.